Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. Me. Thank you so much for your comments and discussion on the last video. I appreciate all of you. I saw most of the comments. I didn't have a chance to respond to any and all, so this is going to be, I'm going to try and condense a lot of information in this video. I'm going to try and cover many things. We'll see how this goes. Hopefully it won't be too incredibly long. And we're going to start with this article, which many people sent to me, and I didn't have a chance to cover. This is from about a week ago. And this is very disturbing news article. Someone deliberately set fire to beehives in Texas, killing 500,000 bees. This is from May 2nd. Beehives were deliberately set on fire at a bee yard in Brazoria County, Texas on the weekend, killing 500,000 bees in an act described as beyond comprehension. Volunteers discovered the wreckage on the morning of Saturday, April 27th. Someone did major damage to the BCBA bee yard in Alvin last night, wrote the Brazoria County Beekeepers Association in a Facebook post. It's bad enough to think in today's world this would happen, but dumping them over and then setting fire to them is beyond comprehension. What? I don't even understand what the motivation would be to do this. Like what? Unless it's some kind of, revenge, some kind of feud or squabble among beekeepers. I don't know. Blackened hives had been strewn across the yard, still burning, with one brood frame floating in a nearby lake. Bees still clinging to it and trying to care for their eggs. Nearly 20 hives were destroyed, each containing around 30,000 bees. According to the Houston Chronicle, honeybees aren't actually endangered. On what planet? They're not actually endangered. They're just dying by the millions. But in the last century, the world has seen a worrying decline. In the U.S., there were 5.9 million honey-producing colonies in 1947. This fell to 4.5 million in 1980, and 2.44 million by 2008, so less than half. We've got less than half of the bees in the U.S. than we did 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Or if I'm doing math right, that's 70 years ago. Since then, there's been a slight uptick. In 2017, there were 2.67 million. Nevertheless, pollinators like bees are absolutely vital to Earth ecosystems, and scientists around the world have been increasingly concerned about what is called colony collapse disorder. In this context, hive vandalism is even more baffling, yet it keeps occurring. Just 6 months ago, vandals destroyed hives in Iowa, killing thousands of bees. Who is doing this? What kind of psychopathic freaks are doing this? An earlier incident in January 2018 left 200,000 bees dead in California, and 2 teen boys killed 500,000 bees in Iowa in December 2017. These boys were charged with 3 felonies: criminal mischief, agricultural and animal facilities offenses, and burglary. Felony, arson, and criminal mischief charges are on the table for whoever vandalized the Brazoria County hive. Police are currently searching for a suspect, and a reward is being offered for any information that will lead to an arrest and conviction. Insane and disgusting. So I'm going to cover a couple videos, just, for y'all to peruse. This is a good video with George Monbiot on Democracy Now!, kind of talking about Extinction Rebellion and talking about the state of what's going on. And this is a good little quote from him.
You've cited Jeremy Lent and his idea of an ecological civilization. What would that take?
Yes, so this is one of several very important ideas which are coming forward at the moment for really looking at how we can replace our whole political economy with a new system, because it's very clear now, capitalism is broken. It is like a gun pointed at the heart of the planet, and it's got these characteristics which mean that it will essentially, necessarily destroy our life support systems.
And that's the absolute truth of it. So capitalism itself, well, it's the mechanism for destruction. It's not the sole reason or not the sole part of the destruction, but the capitalist system itself surely enables the destruction, the wholesale destruction of the earth. Whereas another system, I'm sorry, we're getting some dog squabbles. Whereas another system might actually not destroy the earth or allow human beings to live in harmony with the earth. But human beings being the main problem, human beings and their rampant speciesism. Pardon the interruption. Yeah, I mean, people basically, if we really want to talk about how we're going to stop the destruction of the climate or the Earth systems, we have to stop. We have to stop kind of everything in its tracks, right? And we have to. People have to stop going to work. Basically, stop the gears from turning. I believe George Monbiot also talked about talked a little bit about the Green New Deal, but talked about like a federal mandate for like a right to work or right to life like measure, which would guarantee. Let me rephrase this. A federal guarantee, jobs guarantee, which basically would pay people their salaries while they transition to, green jobs. But basically we need to just give people money and food to live because, we needed to tell them to just stop going to work. Stop the whole, we need to stop a lot of these things from happening. Like nobody needs to go to work unless you're working in emergency services or working in the medical field or you're growing food. And possibly, whatever police presence or, peacekeeper presence that needs to be around. But for the most part, a lot of jobs just need to stop happening. And I know, that's a huge concept for people to take on board. The way they put it in this, which is very nice, it's like, okay, a jobs guarantee, which means, we'll pay you while you transition or retrain to get into another job. And that sounds really nice. That's a much more politically correct or easy way to put it, and that might actually make people think like, oh, really? Okay, so I'll get guaranteed my salary. That's great. I can still live. I can still go buy food, et cetera, et cetera. It's a good start. It needs to go even further because you just need to be growing your own food, or you need to be growing your own food in a co-op with other people. And be doing very little. You have to be doing much, much less than you're doing now. So, for most jobs, we can skip the retraining and, transitioning. We could transition people to just sitting their ass at home, growing their own food and, living their lives without all the stuff. Driving the cars, flying in the planes, going on the trains, doing all the things, all that stuff. So, moving on, because I've said a lot about that. This is crazy, scary news from Robert Scribbler's channel. Arctic Ocean coastal temperatures surged to 84.2 Fahrenheit today. And so that's 36 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. The temperatures are supposed to be in their 40s, and they are 84 today. High 40s today, is what the regular temperature is supposed to be. If this doesn't scare the pants off of you, this anomaly, this abnormality, which has been happening at a steady clip over the last 3 or 4 years, we're seeing 20 degree, 30 degree departures from the norm in the Arctic Circle. That is not good. And let's hear this.
The Arctic coastline. Now, this temperature is approximately 20 degrees Celsius or 36 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for this time of year. So high temperatures for this region at this time of year typically range in the mid to upper 40s Fahrenheit, and or around the 5 to 10 degree Celsius reading range. And so what we're seeing right now is a very extreme departure. It'd be it'd be similar to a 100 to 105, more like a 100 to 105 degree Fahrenheit reading for the Washington D.C. area in which I'm reporting from. So a very, very extreme temperature.
So that's crazy. So yes, if it was 100 degrees or 105 degrees in Washington D.C. right now today, people would be like, "Oh, that's warm." And we are seeing these extreme temperatures happening all over the place. In other parts of the world, we're seeing these extreme temperatures happening. In April, Vietnam, or was it Thailand recently, had temperatures in the hundreds, almost 50 degrees Celsius in April. Again, not good news for the state of the planet. Moving on, so this is Graham Elwood. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this channel. It's pretty good. It's called Political Vigilante. But it is at Graham Elwood on YouTube. And good progressive commentator, newscaster / comedian. I'm not sure why comedians seem to be... There seems to be a glut of comedians giving us the news. I have thoughts about that, but I won't go into it now. Anyways, this is a good little clip.
If you think the Paris Climate Agreement and regulations on emissions and fuel efficiency, you think that's going to stop climate change, you are a moron. You are a blithering idiot. You have your head so far up your centrist ass that you can taste your own bullshit coming out of your mouth. Does that make sense? It's a medical thing. Look at it.
So it's pretty good clip there from Graham Elwood. He's talking, this video is basically about Biden's, centrist middle ground climate policy, which is basically no climate, almost no climate policy, which is basically lip service, which is basically what, very small incremental changes that Obama gave us. And, there's no signs that Biden would be like even more, I guess hawkish on climate change. He wouldn't. He'd probably do very minimal, some things like to make people feel better. He barely talks about climate change, if at all. And I think Graham talks about in this video, he didn't talk about climate change until there were people standing right in front of his face, like 3 feet from him, with signs, about climate emergency. This is a good video. Check it out. I'm going to link it below. Another video. This is Guy McPherson talking to Wieslaw Maslowski. I think that's how we pronounce it. And he is a climate scientist. He's mainly concerned with the Arctic ice. So it's an interesting conversation where he really hems and haws, and he is really reluctant to say when we're going to get a blue ocean event. And this is, basically people are saying, God, this is the information that we're getting, that we're not going to have a blue ocean event this year from this man. I I don't know. I still think it's 50-50. The ice is incredibly thin. Everybody knows this. There's less ice than ever before. There's less ice right now. We're in an all-time low for ice. Is it ice extent or ice thickness? I don't know. According to the charts and the graphs, and you know, who knows which way it's going to go. I'm certainly looking very, very likely in the next 1, 2, 3 years. But this, so he's saying that that good sources are saying that it's somewhere between 2030 and 2040, but that possibly could be before then. Peter Wadhams is putting it at in the early 20s, 2023, 2024. Either way, none of that is good. But I'm just going to give you this quote real quick.
There are some publications now, peer-reviewed publications, which are using the global climate and Earth system models, and they handpick some of them for their better representation of the Arctic ice area, and they provided the estimate of ice disappearance roughly between 2030 and 2040.
And what do you think about that?
I would still think that it might happen sooner than that, but I would hesitate to provide a specific date, basically because the system is so complex and so non-linear.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The system is complex and non-linear. So, he's saying, all evidence and all models and all things being what they are, that we're not going to have a blue ocean event this year. I wouldn't hold my breath. I would think that, the irony would be that people have been predicting a blue ocean event plus or minus 3 years from 2016, and at 2019 we finally get one. I don't know. I'd put a high probability on it. That's just me. I put over 50%. I'd probably put a 70% likelihood on it. But that's just me. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a climate scientist. I'm not even an Arctic ice scientist. But who knows? I just think we're in the high probability range, right? We're in the next 5 years. The next 5 years, if we don't have a blue ocean event, we can really say that we got very, very lucky. And if this is true, if we actually have until 2030 or 2035 to have a blue ocean event, then this is every reason to take all action to, if we're believing that the blue ocean event is the start of some, the tipping points, the very, very serious feedbacks. And who knows if we're not already into those feedbacks right now, because we have other things happening. We have, the possibility of major crop losses happening. We have other extreme weather events happening. We could still have wet bulb temperatures start to pop up all over the world and kill thousands of people at any given time. And that can start happening right now, this year. But if we have, 10 more years until a blue ocean event, when we lose the Arctic ice, we lose the Earth, if that's the quote. So if we have 10 years until we lose the Arctic ice and we still have a chance of doing something, then we should have, everybody's butt should be out in the street. Everybody's butt should be out doing something in service of the planet, in service of our children's future. Period. The end. End of story. Even if we only have 2 years left, everybody's butt should be doing something. Though that's just my thought. That's just my opinion. And here it is. A food crisis is here. Trouble for farmers in the Corn Belt. I'm going to link the previous video below. You guys can watch that if you haven't already. I think most people have seen it. Trouble is brewing for farmers in the United States located in the Corn Belt. Corn is fed to the animals much of the country consumes. So without it, we are staring a food crisis right in the face. Corn planting is already behind on schedule. Or how about behind schedule? This is a strangely written article. The weather in the United States has made farming difficult as of late, while bankruptcies soar and flooding continues. As the weather in 4 of the top 6 states for corn production couples with the skyrocketing number of bankruptcies of American farmers, we could be on the precipice of a food crisis. And to make matters worse, none of the weather is expected to improve, putting even more financial pressure on the already stressed farmers, according to the latest crop progress report that is issued Monday by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The 4 states significantly behind on schedule are Illinois, Minnesota, Indiana, and South Dakota, and they are expected to remain that way, according to AccuWeather meteorologists who have been analyzing the data. Those 4 states combine to produce nearly 40% of the corn in the U.S., and if the weather continues a wet pattern through late May, consumer prices could go up this summer. Iowa and Nebraska, the other 2 states among the top 6 corn producers, are also behind, albeit only slightly behind, according to data from the USDA. The question will be how much farther it will fall behind the pace, said AccuWeather senior meteorologist Jason Nichols. It's about a week behind schedule right now. If it were to go to a week and a half or 2 weeks, that's big news. Most of the problems are because of consistent rains, plus there is also rain in the forecast. Of the 2 key producing states, Iowa isn't too bad, but Illinois is way off schedule. By this time of year, 43% of corn crops would already be planted in Illinois, according to a 5-year average provided by USDA. However, just 9% of 43% of the corn crops has been planted so far. Iowa averages 26% of crops planted at this point, and 21% have been planted so far. 3 of the other top corn producers are lagging behind the season so far. Minnesota, 2% of corn crops planted by now compared to its 5-year average of 24%. Indiana, 2% compared to 17% of South Dakota, 0% compared to 17%, are also well off pace. Not good. And lastly, I wanted to cover this wild story. Have you guys heard anything about this? So in our latest regime change coup attempt, or just regime change attempt at Venezuela, over Venezuela, apparently we've kicked out the people from the Venezuelan consulate and or from the embassy. Excuse me. This isn't happening in Washington, D.C. So this is happening in Washington, D.C. So embassy protectors, Code Pink and some other people had taken over the embassy in Washington, D.C. and been holding the embassy for the Venezuelan government, basically, Maduro's government, while pro-Guaido supporters are trying to scare them and bully them and use all these tactics. So they basically have cut off food supplies to the people in this embassy, and it's just turned into this, this quagmire. And it's kind of insane that this is happening in Washington, D.C. So I'm going to just read a little bit of this. The Venezuelan crisis, a months-long standoff in which opposing forces have tried to wrest control of an economically spiraling country from the socialist president, is more than 2,000 miles away from the quiet environs of 30th and M Streets in upscale Georgetown. But for the past 3 weeks, the conflict has erupted into its own pocket of chaos, one that reflects not only the unrest in its home country, but the bizarre gray area of Washington, D.C.'s diplomatic properties. The embassy of Venezuela's previous occupants, the diplomatic corps of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, has been gone since April 24th, after the White House revoked their status and ordered them to leave the building. They left, but not before inviting a collection of activists as one last act of resistance from the embattled regime. For almost a month, the distinguished-looking 5-story brick building has been occupied by more than 36 activists from a collection of American anti-interventionist groups, cooking, sleeping, and even watching Game of Thrones inside. By day, they hang banners from the windows and shout slogans through amplifiers. Facing off against them have been Venezuelan emigres outside the embassy, at times numbering in the hundreds, who support the government of U.S. recognized President Juan Guaido and who claim the buildings belong to them. Since last week, Venezuelans have been staying outside the building in tents, blocking the entrances to the embassy and at times confronting and harassing the leftist demonstrators face to face. As the face-off drags on, attracting attention from the U.S. and international outlets in Washington, an unanswered question looms over the street. When will the U.S. recognized ambassador swoop in to take the building, and who will seize it for him? So far, dozens of Secret Service and local police officers have completely surrounded the area, but they have not gone inside the building. Francisco Marquez, the political advisor to the Guaido-appointed Trump-approved Ambassador Carlos Vecchio, has been involved in conversations about the embassy with the State Department. Marquez told Political Magazine on Tuesday that there was no question his team would take control of the embassy very soon. This is pretty crazy, but go embassy protectors. This is a completely illegal regime change attempt by the Trump administration and by the U.S. Deep state corporate entities who basically are pushing for this to happen. Also we need their oil. We basically just want to go take their oil. This is just Iraq 2.0. But they are resisting mightily, and more power to them. Godspeed to the Maduro government. And it's really infuriating because I keep, what I hear from the right wing commentators on YouTube and mainstream news outlets is, this whole mantra about, this is what socialism looks like. The Maduro government is failing, and they have all this hunger and crime and poverty, and it's got, their currency is out of control, and they're blaming it on socialism when it's not socialism that's doing it. It's American sanctions, blockades, and outright economic meddling and pressure from all these different forces that have really taken the country out at the knees. This is not socialism failing. This is empirical fascist capitalism, trying to make sure that socialism fails. That's what this is. This is nothing but fascist imperialism, pretty much. The Chavez government, the Chavistas, which is Maduro's continuing to carry on. They're trying to uplift the people, and they uplifted the people by controlling their own wealth and controlling their own oil. And they got into trouble during the oil price downturn, and the Russians have been trying to help them out, but they're getting hammered. And let's hope that they can hold out and that this regime change nonsense does not happen. I don't have a lot of hope for that, because basically whatever we try to orchestrate or construct as a need to, as a have to do kind of humanitarian aid kind of thing, we need to bring them some freedom. Whenever we have our mind set on doing something like that, it usually happens. So more scary international crisis brewing. Not just Venezuela, but Iran as well. But cross your fingers that this does not escalate. And I'm hoping against hope that the Venezuelan people and the Maduro administration can hold on. That is all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below.